Hey guys, DJ here, Top Deck Cards and Games. Today I'm going to do a deck tech on Mono Blue Devotion featuring Collected Company. The deck rotates pretty soon, but it was one of my favorite decks from Theros when Thassa and Master of Waves came out. So I still have a soft spot for playing those cards since they're just really, really sweet and they have a ton of value. You just play a ton of cheap blue creatures just to get some early devotion. We have 4 Fairy Miscreants and 2 Hypnotic Sirens. Miscreant's pretty key for this deck, actually. One of the better additions from Origins, in my opinion, even though a lot of people don't value it super highly. Because it gives you a reason to just put 1-drops on the board early, and your opponent has incentive to remove them, which is really, really good. Like, they don't want you to draw free cards. When you play a second Miscreant, they're probably going to kill the first one while it's on the stack, which means these crappy cards have drawn removal while still dealing a little bit of damage and giving us devotion. The reason I don't value Hypnotic Siren super highly is that you can't really afford colorless lands in the early game, so I'm not playing any copies of Nykthos. So playing 2 copies of this card, it's going to be a 1-drop sometimes. It just comes in and flies. And sometimes in the super late game, you're going to use it as a mind control. But it seems safe as just to plan on that effect not really coming up. Then for our 2-drops, we have 4 copies of Harbinger of the Tides and 4 Stratus Dancers. These are the two of the bigger additions the deck's gotten recently, followed, well, maybe not the biggest one, but Shortcraft Elemental is probably the biggest. But these cards are both super, super strong for this deck. Harbinger being a Grizzly Bear that has 2 blue at its mana cost actually is just game breaking for this deck. I was playing terrible cards like Mind Reaver before just to get myself a double devotion card on turn 2. But this card actually offers a ton of value, being able to come into play, bounce an opponent's creature that attacked already, kind of put the tempo in your favor very early, be able to flash in, giving you more instant speed interaction than you had before even. And just being, like I said, a double devotion 2-drop is super important. Stratus Dancer also, it's another flying creature, letting you get the evasive damage in early. Playing it face down, it's not much of a mind game after your opponent understands what you're playing, but it does offer some tricks. You could play other morph cards, especially to kind of bait your opponent. Like, they're going to have to assume this card, even though Short Crasher also can come into play face down. But this is the safest card for them to play around generally. But it just gives you a lot of utility, being able to negate your opponent's wraths and different things. It really shores up one of this deck's weaknesses that it had from beforehand, which was it's super, super weak to Wrath of God effects. But with Stratus Dancer, Short Crasher to a lesser extent, and Collected Company now added to it, you're able to kind of play around wraths and sort of cut your losses to give yourself a decent amount of value. Next we have our 3-drop slot, which is actually a little bit overcrowded. We have 4 Short Crasher Elementals, 4 Silumgar Sorcerers, and 4 Thassa. These cards are all super key, though. Thassa, again, a card that helps us play around Wrath. Same with Short Crasher. Even same with Silumgar Sorcerer, actually. This deck's very resilient to Wraths as opposed to how it used to be. Thassa lets us make sure we're going to hit the cards we need. You can, make sure you hit your 4th land drop. You can filter out lands after that point so that you don't flood out. Or if you need extra lands to play multiple cards in a turn, you can leave lands there so you can keep playing. It gives creatures unblockable, which is insane to sneak through damage since we are playing a pile of crappy creatures that we kind of just expect to kill our opponent somehow through magic and sorcery. But being an indestructible 5/5 for very, very little investment is super, super high value. Shortcrasher Elemental is triple devotion on its own, which is super key. All we have to have is one other symbol in play with this guy and Thassa, and we've already have an enable Thassa over 3 cards, which is a super small investment. To a lesser extent, Sorcerer does the same thing. If you have Harbinger of the Tides in play, that's 5 symbols right there. So these cards really, really help enable Thassa very easily, as well as adding a lot of devotion for Master of Waves. Shortcrasher is super resilient to removal with its blink effect, even though it comes back face down, so you will lose out on your devotion. It does let you keep a constant threat on the board and churn out quite a powerful clock. While Silumgar Sorcerer, having Flash, lets you play at instant speed a little more, letting you bluff things like Harbinger and Collected Company while actually having something to do. Same with leaving Stratus Dancers face down. Like, you're able to actually do stuff with your mana, which can make the deck much harder to play against. Standard is a fairly creature-focused meta or format. Right now, maybe not as much as some other times, but still like Siege Rhinos and various other strong creatures you'll just really need countered. Sacrificing something like a floated Fairy Miscreant that's drawn a card to Silumgar Sorcerer just to counter a big threat is just such high value. And being a flash creature lets you put threats into play at the end of your opponent's turn, so they can't really deal with them at sorcery speed, which is just a huge plus. For our last creature, running it out, Master of Waves, really the big boss of the deck. What the Master does is give all your other elementals +1/+1, which does buff Shortcrasher Elemental, a pretty sweet interaction. And then it puts a 1/0 horse not horse, what are they? Elemental token into play. They're water horses. Puts 1/0 elemental tokens into play, equal to your devotion to blue. So even if you just get a couple of them, you have a pretty sizable army. Like if you have 3 other devotions, so we only have a short crasher in play, then we play our Master of Waves, we still get 4 1/0 horses that with his ability will all be 2/1s. This is extremely powerful. It makes a basically must-answer threat from your opponent. Your opponent has to deal with this card or they're just going to lose the game. Do it every single time you play it. On top of that, you can just start attacking in at that point or block if you're behind on board. It just does everything. It really clears the gap for the deck. For our spells, we have 4 Collected Companies. Company is the only non-blue card in the deck. We are splashing, I think, 10 green lands for it. It's not too hard to find the mana to cast it. It hasn't been an issue in any of my games. You could play more. I would want to probably play extra lands at that point if I was putting it to come into play tap land. If I was having trouble casting this, I would cut some creature somewhere, or maybe one of my Bidens. For a 25th land, it would be another Thornwall Falls. I believe that's what they're called. Yeah, Thornwood Falls, sorry. But this card gets every creature in your deck other than Master of Waves. So you can put plenty of different things into play. I've really blown people out, like played Coco, gotten a Fairy Miscreant that was going to draw a card, and then a Silumgar Sorcerer to counter a creature they played. This isn't like a super high value thing just looking at it, but when you counter like their Siege Rhino, you got a free card, you sacrifice one of your creatures to do so, but whatever. All at instant speed, that's just really, really strong. You can create some very interesting blowouts, as well as letting you play around your opponent's removal. Putting cards on the board, your opponent has to deal with them on their turn, and then you just put out more dudes at the end of the turn. It's just super, super strong. Additionally, we have 2 Bidens of Thassa. Biden also lets you just kind of go over the top of your opponent, having such almost unlimited card draw, basically only gated by the creatures you have. Makes it super, super hard to outgrind this deck. Your flyers are going to get in there for damage, and you're going to get extra cards out of it, which means your opponent can deal with your board, but you're just going to be able to post back up with more creatures. It certainly doesn't have to be a 2-of, but the value you can get from the card is so incredibly high that I like playing 2. I just like drawing cards, though, so it's probably my fault for being weird. For our lands, we have 14 basic islands. You can count them. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. They're all there. We're
really?
cool. Shut up. Then 4 Yavimaya Coast, 4 Temple of Mystery, and 2 Thornwood Falls. If you're having trouble casting your Collected Companies, we cut somewhere, probably like one of these for a 25th land, being the 3rd Thornwood Falls. And if you're really, really struggling, we can cut a basic island for another one. If you wanted to splash any other green cards, that would 100% be my recommendation to change there so we have 12 green sources. But with just Coco, I think you're okay playing 10. I haven't had any issue in my games, though. If I sideboarded green cards, I would probably want to change my mana a little bit to accommodate. The reason I don't just cut islands for Thornwood Falls is because you already have 6 come to play tap lands, which in a deck with such an aggressive curve like this are basically just blanks a lot of the time. Like you need to be casting your turn 2 2-drops. You need to be casting turn 3 short crashers. Sometimes you can manage to wait a turn, kind of get like a scry, and then set your board up, but I have a hard time justifying that to gain a life. When I'm scrying and making sure my plays are set up, it feels pretty reasonable sometimes. When it's just gain a life, I would much rather curve out. Though, obviously, it is necessary a lot of the time to skip on your 3-drop so you can play turn 4 company. But that's really it. There's not a lot of sweet you can do with lands. I already mentioned that notably absent is Nykthos, for the same reason that there's not more Thornwood Falls. We already have these 6 coming to play tap lands, which can really throw off our curve. And I don't want my turn 3 land to be Nykthos, or God forbid my turn 2 land to be Nykthos, where I'm not able to even crash my Harbingers of the Tides or slow down my short crasher elementals. It's just not worth the risk when the only thing you really want to power out is either Hypnotic Siren, or after you've connected with a bunch of dudes while you have Biden in play, you'll have a million cards to play, but that's just win more. You're just playing extra cards for the sake of playing them in those situations. But yeah, this is one of my favorite decks in Standard right now. It's certainly not the best deck in the meta or anything. It's got plenty of weaknesses. You can shore up some of them with your sideboard, with cards like Disdainful Stroke, Negate, Void Snare type cards like Bounce Effects, Profaners, Sidici's Faithful. Just plenty of cards that can help shore up your tough matchups, and then you can also use green cards to help deal with your opponent's artifacts and enchantments, especially if like the Thopter deck's popular, you can use Reclamation Sage type effects. There's plenty of different options, and I think this deck's really cool. I don't think it's by any means like a tier 1 deck, but if you're an F&M player or just playing at like dinky local events, I think this deck is more than good enough to get you there, and it's certainly what I would play if I was playing in any tournaments in the super near future. So yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed this. It's a really cool deck. It's one of my favorites in the format. Make sure you like this video and subscribe to our channel for plenty more content. There will be lots more coming soon. And until next time, guys, thanks for watching.